She called the first contact in her dying mother's phone and said, "Please help, my mama won't wake up." She didn't know she'd just dialed the city's most feared mafia boss. He didn't know the unconscious woman on that kitchen floor was carrying his biggest secret for 15 years. By the time Dominic Castellano realized the crying 8-year-old had his eyes, his enemies had already seen the photos, and now everything he built was about to burn. If you want to discover how this story began and what happened after this moment, subscribe to the channel and leave in the comments where you're watching from. Each view helps bring more stories like this one. Lily Torres had learned to be quiet. At 8 years old, she understood that grown-up conversations stopped when she entered rooms, that her mama's phone calls always ended abruptly when Lily came near, and that questions about her father were met with sad smiles and soft deflections. "He loved you very much, baby, but life is complicated." Their apartment was small but warm. Third floor of a walk-up in a neighborhood where people minded their own business. The walls were decorated with Lily's crayon drawings, and the kitchen always smelled like her mama's empanadas on Sundays. Emma Torres worked 2 jobs, mornings at a bakery, evenings cleaning offices, but she never missed Lily's school presentations, never forgot to leave notes in her lunchbox with hearts drawn in the corners. Tonight, Lily sat cross-legged on the worn couch, her homework spread across the coffee table. Her mama was making dinner, humming that song she always hummed when she thought Lily wasn't listening, something soft and sad that made her voice crack at the edges. "Mama, how do you spell beautiful?" Lily called out. Silence. "Mama?" Lily looked up. The humming had stopped. She heard something heavy hit the floor. "Mama!" She scrambled off the couch, her math worksheet fluttering to the ground. Emma lay crumpled on the kitchen floor, her eyes half open but unseeing, one hand still clutching a wooden spoon. The pot on the stove hissed as soup began to boil over. "Mama! Mama, wake up!" Lily dropped to her knees, shaking her mother's shoulder. Emma's skin was warm but she didn't respond, didn't blink, didn't move except for the shallow rise and fall of her chest. Terror flooded Lily's small body. She'd never seen her mama like this, so still, so absent. "Call someone. You have to call someone." She spotted her mama's phone on the counter. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped it. She didn't know the password, but the emergency call option glowed at the bottom of the screen. Wait, Mama had shown her once. "If anything ever happens to me, baby, you press here." She'd opened the phone's medical ID, and there at the top was a single emergency contact. Just a letter, D. No name. No explanation. Lily's finger hovered over the number. She didn't know who D was, but Mama had put them there. Mama trusted them. She pressed call. Across the city, in a penthouse that overlooked glittering lights and endless darkness, Dominic Castellano stood at his floor-to-ceiling window with a glass of bourbon he hadn't touched. 42 years old. Self-made. Feared. Untouchable. Empty. The empire he'd built from nothing sprawled beneath him. Clubs, real estate, businesses both legitimate and shadowed. He'd clawed his way up from the streets, survived wars other men didn't, made decisions that kept him alive and alone. His phone rarely rang with numbers he didn't recognize. When it did, it was usually someone who'd gotten hold of his private line through means they'd regret. But tonight, the phone vibrated against the marble countertop. Unknown number. He considered ignoring it. Then, driven by nothing but instinct, he answered. "Who is this?" The voice that responded was small, broken, desperate. "Please, please help. My mama won't wake up and I'm scared and I don't know what to do." A child. A little girl, crying. Dominic's entire body went rigid. The glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the floor in an explosion of crystal and amber liquid. "Slow down," he said, and his voice, the voice that made grown men confess their sins, came out gentler than it had in years. "Tell me what happened." She fell down and her eyes are open but she won't talk to me and I tried to wake her up but she won't wake up." The words tumbled out between hitching sobs. "Is she breathing?" I think so, yes." What's your address? Dominic was already moving, grabbing his jacket, snapping his fingers at Marco, his head of security, who materialized instantly. The little girl recited an address in a voice that shook with terror. Dominic knew the neighborhood. 20 minutes away, maybe 15 if Marco drove. What's your name, sweetheart? Lily. Something in his chest cracked. Lily, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I'm sending an ambulance to you right now, and I'm coming too. Can you unlock your front door? Mama says not to open the door for strangers. You're right. Smart girl. Don't open it. But unlock it so the paramedics can get in when they arrive. Can you do that? Why, yes. Good. Stay on the phone with me. Don't hang up. He was in the elevator, Marco beside him speaking rapidly into his own phone, dispatching both an ambulance and their fastest driver. Dominic's mind raced. A child had called him. A child who had his private, encrypted number listed as an emergency contact. Lily, he said as they burst into the garage, what's your mama's name? There was a pause. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Emma. Emma Torres. The world stopped. Dominic froze mid-step. Marco caught his arm, steadying him. Emma. 15 years. 15 years since she'd walked out of his life without explanation, disappearing like smoke, ignoring every attempt he'd made to find her. He'd finally stopped looking, convinced himself she was a ghost, a memory, a mistake. And now, sir. Marco's voice was urgent. Dominic forced himself to move, sliding into the back of the SUV. His heart hammered against his ribs. I'm still here, Lily, he said into the phone, his voice steady despite the chaos inside him. I'm coming. You're not alone. The apartment building looked worse than Dominic expected. Cracked concrete steps, flickering hallway lights, the kind of place where people survived rather than lived. He took the stairs 3 at a time, Marco and 2 others behind him. The ambulance was pulling up as they reached the 3rd floor. The door was unlocked, just as Lily had promised. Dominic pushed it open. The first thing he saw was the kitchen. Small, clean, a pot still steaming on the stove. Then he saw her. Emma. Lying on the floor, unconscious, her dark hair spread around her like it had been that last morning 15 years ago when he'd watched her sleep, memorizing her face, not knowing it would be the last time. She looked the same. Older, yes. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, a tiredness in her face even in unconsciousness, but still her. Still the woman who'd haunted every quiet moment of his life since. Then he saw the little girl. Lily sat beside her mother, knees pulled to her chest, tears streaming down her round cheeks. She looked up when Dominic entered and his breath caught. She had Emma's dark curls, Emma's small nose. But she had his eyes. Gray-blue, almost silver in certain light. The eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. His daughter. He knew it the way he knew his own heartbeat. The timeline fit, she was 7, maybe 8. The right age. And Emma had kept his number after all these years, listed him as her emergency contact. She'd kept him in her phone as D. Dominic's knees nearly buckled. He steadied himself against the doorframe. Lily. His voice came out rough. She nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. Are you D? Yeah, sweetheart. I'm D. The paramedics rushed past him, kneeling beside Emma, checking vitals, asking questions Lily tried to answer through hiccuping sobs. Dominic moved closer, careful not to crowd the child, and lowered himself to her eye level. You did so good calling me, he said softly. Your mama's going to be okay. These people are going to help her. You promise? He shouldn't. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep, and life had taught him that nothing was guaranteed. But looking into those eyes, his eyes, in that small, terrified face, he couldn't stop himself. I promise. Lily studied him for a long moment, then did something that shattered every wall he'd spent 15 years building. She reached out and grabbed his hand. Her fingers were so small, sticky with tears and fear, and they wrapped around his like she was holding onto a lifeline. Dominic looked down at their joined hands and felt something break open in his chest, something he thought had died the day Emma disappeared. Possible aneurysm, one of the paramedics said sharply. We need to move now. They lifted Emma onto a stretcher. Lily's hand tightened on Dominic's, her whole body trembling. I want to go with Mama. You will, Dominic said. He looked at the lead paramedic. Both of us will. The paramedic opened his mouth to protest, saw Dominic's face, and wisely nodded instead. As they carried Emma out, Lily still clutching Dominic's hand, he caught sight of something that made his blood freeze. On Lily's wrist, partially hidden by her sleeve, was a silver bracelet. He'd bought 2 of them 15 years ago from a street vendor the night he'd told Emma he loved her for the first time. Matching. Simple chains with tiny stars. Emma had worn hers every day until she left. And now their daughter wore one too. The hospital was chaos controlled by routine, fluorescent lights, antiseptic smell, the steady beep of machines monitoring lives hanging in balance. Dominic sat in the waiting room, Lily curled in the chair beside him, finally asleep after hours of crying. He hadn't touched her again after that handhold in the apartment. Hadn't allowed himself to. This wasn't his world. This child, no matter what his instincts screamed, no matter whose eyes she had, she wasn't his to claim. Emma had made that choice 15 years ago when she'd vanished. She'd had her reasons. She always had reasons. Marco stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear, managing the empire that didn't stop running just because Dominic's past had kicked down his door. Every few minutes, Marco would glance over, concern flickering across his usually stoic face. Boss, Marco said quietly, covering the phone. Vincent Morello's people have been asking questions about why you left the Santoro meeting early. Want me to handle it? Dominic's jaw tightened. Vincent Morello, his main rival, a man who'd love nothing more than to find a weakness in Dominic's armor. This little girl, sleeping trustingly beside him, was a weakness that could get her killed. Tell them family emergency. Nothing more. Family. Marco's eyebrow rose slightly. You heard me. A doctor emerged from the double doors, clipboard in hand, expression carefully neutral. Dominic stood immediately, gently shifting so he wouldn't wake Lily. Emma Torres? He asked. The doctor nodded, studying him. Are you family? The lie came easily. Yes. She suffered a ruptured brain aneurysm. We've stabilized her, but she needs surgery within the next few hours. It's risky, but without it... The doctor paused, glancing at Lily. She won't survive. Do the surgery. I need consent from next of kin. I'll sign whatever you need. The doctor hesitated, then handed over forms. Dominic signed Emma's life into a stranger's hands, and the irony wasn't lost on him. She'd run from him to protect herself, to protect whatever life she'd built, and now he was the one deciding whether she lived or died. As the doctor walked away, Lily stirred. Is Mama okay? Dominic looked down at her, at this impossible child who'd appeared in his life through a phone call and hadn't let go since. He should call someone. Child services, maybe. A neighbor. Anyone but him. But the thought of handing her off to strangers made something violent rise in his throat. She's fighting, he said instead. She's strong like you. Do you know my mama? Lily's voice was small, confused. I did. A long time ago. Why did you stop? Because she left. Because I wasn't good enough. Because the life I lived destroys everything soft. Sometimes grown-ups make things complicated, he said. Lily seemed to accept this. She was used to non-answers. She pulled her knees up again, and the bracelet caught the light. My mama gave me this, she said, touching it. She said it was special. That someone who loved her very much gave it to her, and now she's giving it to me so I always remember that love is real even when people go away. Dominic's hands clenched into fists. Emma had told their daughter about him. In some way, she'd kept him alive in this child's imagination. But she'd never let him know. Never given him the choice. Anger surged through him, hot, bitter, 15 years in the making. Then Lily yawned and leaned her head against his arm, trusting, seeking comfort, and the anger dissolved into something far more dangerous: fear. He didn't know how to be what this child needed. He knew how to negotiate, how to intimidate, how to survive. He didn't know how to be gentle. But when Lily's breathing evened out into sleep again, and her small weight pressed against him, Dominic didn't move away. He sat perfectly still, a dangerous man holding something precious, and let himself feel everything he'd buried. The surgery took 6 hours. Dominic didn't leave. Couldn't leave, even when Marco suggested he go home, get some rest, let Marco stay with the girl. The suggestion was logical, practical, everything Dominic normally valued. He dismissed it with a single look. Lily woke up twice. The first time, she asked for water, and Dominic found himself in the hospital cafeteria at 3 in the morning, buying apple juice because that's what the kind-eyed volunteer said kids preferred. When he returned, Lily accepted the juice box without question, poking the straw through the foil opening with the concentrated focus only children possess. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome." The second time she woke, it was from a nightmare. She gasped, disoriented, and Dominic instinctively reached out, then caught himself, his hand hovering awkwardly in the air between them. Lily grabbed it anyway, pulling it close like an anchor. "Bad dream?" he asked. She nodded against his arm. "Mama was gone and I was alone and nobody came." "I came," Dominic said quietly. "I'm here. Will you stay?" Every instinct told him to create distance, to protect this child from the poison of his world. But her fingers were wrapped around his, and she was looking at him with his own eyes, and he was so damn tired of being alone. "I'll stay." As dawn broke through the waiting room windows, a nurse approached, older, with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen everything. "You're with Emma Torres?" "Yes. The social worker is asking about the child. They need to know her situation." The nurse's gaze moved to Lily, then back to Dominic. "Are you her father?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Dominic could feel Marco's attention sharpen from across the room. Lily had dozed off again, but even in sleep, she held on to his hand. He thought about Emma, unconscious in an operating room, unable to confirm or deny. He thought about the bracelet, those eyes, the timeline that made terrible, perfect sense. He thought about what claiming this child would mean, the target it would paint on her back, the enemies who would use her to destroy him. Then he thought about what not claiming her would mean. Social services, foster care. This little girl waking up in a stranger's home, her mother fighting for life, completely alone. "Yes," he said. "I'm her father." The nurse's expression softened slightly. She made a note on her tablet. "We'll update the records. Someone will be out soon with an update on Emma's condition." When she left, Marco moved closer, voice low. "Boss, are you sure about this?" "No," Dominic admitted. "But I'm not walking away." An hour later, the surgeon emerged, still in scrubs, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Dominic stood carefully, trying not to wake Lily. "The surgery went as well as could be expected," the doctor said. "We've relieved the pressure, repaired what we could. The next 72 hours are critical. If she wakes up, there may be complications. Memory loss, cognitive issues, motor function problems. Or she may recover fully. It's too early to know. But she'll live. If there are no complications, yes. She has a chance." Dominic released a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Can I see her?" The doctor hesitated. "Family only in ICU. Immediate family." "I'm her." Dominic paused, the word foreign on his tongue. "Her partner. The father of her child." It was the first time he'd said it out loud as fact rather than suspicion, and saying it made it real in a way that terrified him. The doctor nodded slowly. "Room 4C. But the little one can't come in yet." Dominic looked down at Lily, still sleeping, her hand now relaxed in his. Marco read the unspoken question. I've got her, boss. She'll be safe. Trusting Marco with his life was easy. He'd done it 100 times. Trusting him with this child required a different kind of faith. But Lily barely stirred when Dominic gently extracted his hand and Marco took his place in the chair beside her. Dominic followed the doctor through sterile corridors to a room filled with machines and monitored silence. And there, finally, was Emma. She looked small in the hospital bed, swallowed by equipment and tubes and the mechanical rhythm of machines breathing for her. Her dark hair had been partially shaved for surgery, a stark white bandage covering the left side of her head. Her face was pale, peaceful in a way that reminded him of another morning, another lifetime. Dominic stood in the doorway, unable to make himself cross the threshold. 15 years. The memories came whether he wanted them or not. Emma, laughing in his tiny apartment, spinning in circles with her arms out like she was dancing with the world. You're too serious, Dee. When did you forget how to smile? Emma, tucked against his chest at dawn, tracing the scars on his knuckles. These tell stories. Someday, will you trust me enough to share them? Emma, standing in his doorway with tears streaming down her face, shaking her head when he reached for her. I can't do this. I can't watch you destroy yourself. I'm sorry. And then, nothing. Her apartment empty. Her phone disconnected. Every friend, every connection, vanished like she'd never existed. Dominic forced himself forward, pulled a chair close to her bedside. Up close, he could see the changes time had carved, faint lines around her eyes, a small scar on her chin that hadn't been there before, the roughness of hands that had worked hard for years. She'd built a life without him, raised their daughter alone, struggled in ways he could only imagine, judging by that apartment, those 2 jobs, the quiet exhaustion that seemed etched into her even now. And she'd never told him. The anger flickered again, but it couldn't take root. Not here. Not with her fighting for every breath. He noticed a plastic bag on the side table, Emma's belongings from the apartment. Her phone, keys, wallet. Almost without thinking, he reached for the wallet, flipped it open. A driver's license with her picture, still beautiful despite the DMV's harsh lighting. An EBT card. $17 in cash. A library card so worn the numbers were barely visible. And tucked in the photo slot, creased and faded, a picture of them. Dominic's hand trembled as he pulled it out. It had been taken at a street fair 15 years ago, maybe a month before she left. Someone had caught them mid-laugh, Emma tucked under his arm, both of them looking at each other instead of the camera. He was younger, less hardened, and the way he was looking at her. He'd never looked at anyone like that since. On the back, in Emma's handwriting, the good days. Remember these. She'd kept it, carried it, while raising their daughter, working herself to exhaustion, building a life in the shadows, she'd kept this moment close. Why didn't you tell me? He whispered to her unconscious form. Why didn't you give me the choice? The machines beeped their steady rhythm. No answers came. Dominic tucked the photo back carefully, then noticed something else, a small notebook at the bottom of the bag. Emma's handwriting covered the pages. Not a diary, exactly. More like letters. Letters to him. Dear Dee. Lily asked about her father today. She's 5 now, so curious about everything. I told her you were brave and strong, and that you loved her even though you couldn't be here. It's not a lie, not completely. I have to believe you would have loved her if you'd known. I have to believe I made the right choice, keeping you both apart. Your world is so dark, and she is so full of light. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk losing her the way I was losing you. But God, some days I wish. The entry ended there, unfinished. Dominic flipped through pages of similar letters. Years of them. Moments of doubt, fear, longing. Lily's first words. Her first day of school. The time she got sick and Emma had worked double shifts to pay for medicine. Every milestone he'd missed, documented in ink and regret. The last entry was dated 3 days ago. Dear Dee. I put your number in my phone today. After all these years, I finally did it. I don't know why. Maybe because Lily's getting older and the questions are getting harder. Maybe because I'm tired of being alone in this. Maybe because I never really stop. It cut off mid-sentence. Dominic closed the notebook, his throat tight. She'd been thinking about him. About reaching out. And now she was here, unconscious, and he was holding their daughter's hand in a waiting room, and everything was broken and impossible and... Sir. A nurse poked her head in. The little girl is asking for you. She's awake and upset. Dominic stood immediately, cast one last look at Emma, and left her secrets on the bedside table. Lily needed him. And for the first time in 15 years, someone needed him for something other than power or fear. Dominic discovered that 8-year-olds were far more terrifying than rival crime families. I'm hungry, Lily announced for the third time in an hour. They sat in a private waiting room Dominic had arranged, less sterile, with a couch and a television playing cartoons neither of them watched. Marco had returned to handle business, leaving Dominic alone with a small human whose needs were both simple and completely foreign to him. What do you want to eat? He asked. I don't know. Lily swung her legs, her shoes lighting up with each kick. What do you got? Dominic pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, and called his personal chef, at 2 p.m, to ask what children ate. Francesco, what do 8-year-olds eat? There was a long pause. Sir. Food. 4 children. What is it? Chicken nuggets? Mac and cheese? Pizza? Lily's eyes lit up. Pizza. 20 minutes later, a nervous hospital staff member delivered a pizza box from the city's most exclusive Italian restaurant. The kind that didn't do delivery, didn't do takeout, and certainly didn't do children's meals. Lily opened the box and frowned. What's that green stuff? Basil. It looks weird. It's $100 pizza. Does it taste like $100 pizza? Dominic blinked. I don't. What does that mean? Lily picked off the basil with careful fingers, took a bite, and shrugged. Tastes like pizza. The place by our house is $4 and tastes the same. Marco, who'd returned just in time to witness this exchange, coughed to hide a laugh. Dominic shot him a look that had made grown men confess to crimes. Marco grinned anyway. You're really bad at this, Lily observed, cheese stretching from her mouth to the slice. At what? Kid stuff. She wiped her face with her sleeve before Dominic could offer a napkin. Did you not have kids before? No. Why not? I worked a lot. Doing what? Marco's grin widened. Dominic glared at him. Business. What kind of business? Complicated business. Lily considered this, then nodded sagely. Mama says that too when she doesn't want to explain stuff. It means I'll tell you when you're older. Smart kid, Marco muttered. Despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the unconscious woman 3 floors above them, Dominic felt his mouth twitch. Almost a smile. Lily caught it. You should do that more. Do what? Smile. You look scary when you don't. She paused, studying him with unsettling intensity. Are you a bad guy? The question landed like a punch. Dominic had been called many things. Dangerous, ruthless, cold. He'd made peace with what he was years ago. But having a child ask it so directly, with such innocent curiosity, stripped away every justification he'd built. I've done bad things, he said carefully. But I'm trying to do better. Mama says that's what matters. Trying. Your mama's right. Lily finished her slice, then did something unexpected. She pulled a coloring book from the backpack a nurse had retrieved from the apartment, along with a battered box of crayons. Want to color? Dominic Castellano, who'd negotiated million-dollar deals and ordered operations that changed the city's power structure, looked at the coloring book like it might explode. I don't color. It's easy. You just pick a crayon and stay in the lines. Lily flipped to a page with a cartoon dragon. You do the dragon. I'll do the princess. Marco's phone came out, undoubtedly taking a photo for blackmail purposes. But Lily was holding out a purple crayon with such expectation that Dominic found himself taking it. For 30 minutes, the most dangerous man in the city colored a dragon purple while an 8-year-old critiqued his technique. "You're going outside the lines. I'm aware. You gotta go slower." "Noted. That's actually pretty good for a grown-up." When Marco left to take a call, Lily moved closer, leaning against Dominic's side as she colored. The gesture was casual, trusting, and it cracked something in him. "Dee," she said softly. "Yeah. I'm glad you came. I was really scared alone." Dominic set down the crayon, and this time when he put his arm around her small shoulders, it felt less terrifying. "You're not alone anymore." Dominic stood in the hospital corridor, the threat from Vincent Morello burning on his phone screen, and felt the ground shift beneath him. For 15 years, he'd built an empire on control. Every variable accounted for. Every weakness eliminated. Every threat neutralized before it could strike. But this little girl with his eyes, holding a juice box and looking up at him with concern, she was a weakness he couldn't eliminate. Wouldn't eliminate. And now Vincent knew. "Marco," Dominic said quietly. "How long until Vincent makes a move?" "Hours. Maybe less." Marco's expression was grim. "He's been looking for leverage against you for months. This is everything he needs." Dominic finished. He looked down at Lily. "We need to get her somewhere safe. The penthouse is secure. Not secure enough. Not for this." Lily tugged on his jacket. "Dee, you're scaring me." He knelt down, trying to soften features that had forgotten how. "Remember how I said I did complicated business? Yeah. Some people I work with aren't very nice, and I need to make sure you stay safe while I handle it." Her bottom lip trembled. "Are you leaving?" The question gutted him. 3 days. He'd known this child for 3 days, and the thought of walking away felt like tearing out his own heart. But Emma's words still echoed, "You and your world and everything that comes with it." She'd been right to run, right to hide, right to protect Lily from exactly this moment. Dominic stood, pulling out his phone. He had one play left, the only one that mattered. He called Vincent Morello directly. "Castellano." Vincent's voice was smooth, predatory. "Saw you've been playing house. Touching, really. Leave the girl alone." "Or what? You'll wage war? Destroy half the city? How's that going to look to your new daughter?" Dominic's free hand clenched into a fist. "What do you want?" "The East Side territory. Your waterfront operations. And your public acknowledgement that the Morello family is the dominant power in this city. Everything." Vincent wanted everything. "Done," Dominic said. Marco's head snapped up. "Boss. All of it. You can have it. But the girl and her mother are untouchable. You come near them, and whatever's left of me will end you." "That's not a threat. It's a promise." There was a pause. Vincent hadn't expected capitulation. "You're serious?" "Completely." The great Dominic Castellano, surrendering his empire for some kid? "She's not some kid. She's my daughter." Another pause. Then Vincent laughed, genuinely amused. "You know what, Castellano? I believe you. Fine. Deal. But I want it public. Press conference. Tomorrow. You announce your retirement and name me your successor." "Agreed." Dominic hung up. Marco stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Boss, you just gave away everything we built." "I built an empire," Dominic said quietly, watching Lily flip through a magazine in the waiting room chair, oblivious to the conversation that had just dismantled his entire world. "But I never built a life. Emma knew that. That's why she left." "So what now?" "Now I go legitimate. The legal holdings, the real estate, the clubs, we restructure everything clean. It'll be a fraction of what I had, but it'll be enough." He paused. "It has to be enough. Because the alternative, returning to his penthouse, his power, his isolation, while Lily grew up wondering why the stranger who'd promised to stay had disappeared, was unthinkable. He'd made his choice. Later that night, Dominic sat outside Emma's room, waiting. She'd been sedated after their confrontation, but the nurse said she'd asked to see him when she woke. He wasn't sure if that was good or bad. When they finally let him in, Emma was sitting up slightly, looking exhausted but alert. The anger from before had faded, replaced by something more complicated. "Marco told me what you did," she said quietly. "He came to check on Lily and, he told me. About Vincent. About what you gave up." Dominic said nothing. "Why?" Emma's voice cracked. "Why would you destroy everything for a child you just met?" "Because she's mine," Dominic said simply. "And because you were right. The man you left 15 years ago, he would have chosen the Empire. Would have found a way to keep both, consequences be damned. But that man lost the only thing that ever mattered. I won't make that mistake twice." Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. "I'm sorry. What I said before, calling you a stranger, that was cruel. It was true." "No. It wasn't." Emma reached for the bedside table, pulling out the faded photograph. "I carried this every day. Looked at it every time I doubted myself, every time Lily asked about her father. You were never a stranger, Dominic. You were the man I loved so much it terrified me. The man I ran from because staying meant watching you die or become something darker than I could bear. And now," Emma looked at him. Really looked like she was seeing past the suits and the scars to something underneath. "Now I see someone who walked away from everything to protect a little girl he barely knows. That's not the man I ran from. That's the man I hoped you could be." The press conference was brutal. Dominic stood before cameras and reporters, Vincent Morello beside him wearing a victory smile, and announced his retirement from business operations in the city. The questions came fast and sharp, but he answered with the same cold precision he'd once used to command respect. The difference was, this time, he didn't care what they thought. When it was over, he returned to the hospital to find Lily sitting beside Emma's bed, both of them coloring in her book. Lily jumped up. "Look, Mama's awake and the doctor says she's gonna be okay." Emma smiled, tentative but real. Hey. Lily looked between them, then grinned. "Are you guys gonna be weird and grown up, or can we color?" Despite everything, Dominic laughed. Actually laughed. Emma's eyes widened slightly, like she'd forgotten what that sounded like. "We can color," he said. They spent the afternoon in comfortable silence, Lily chattering about everything and nothing, Emma adding soft comments, Dominic mostly listening but occasionally offering a word or two. It felt normal. Impossible but normal. As evening approached, Lily yawned hugely. Emma stroked her hair. "Baby, can you go with Marco for a bit? He's right outside. I need to talk to Dee." Lily's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Are you gonna fight again?" "No fighting," Emma promised. "Just talking." When Lily left reluctantly, Emma patted the bed beside her. Dominic sat carefully, hyper-aware of every tube and wire. "I never told you about her because I was scared," Emma said quietly. "Not of you, of what loving you meant. Your world was so dangerous, and every day I watched you slip further into it. When I found out I was pregnant, I had a choice. Stay and hope you'd change, or leave and guarantee she'd be safe. You chose her. I chose her. And I'd do it again." Emma's hand found his. "But Dominic, these past 3 days, Lily hasn't stopped talking about you. About how you stayed, how you bought her a $100 pizza. She told you about that?" "She told me everything. And I saw the coloring book." Emma's smile was soft. "Purple dragon? It's a good color. She also said you promised you wouldn't leave her." Emma's grip tightened. "Can you keep that promise? Not just for a week or a month, but for real? Because if you're going to be in her life, in our lives, I need to know you're all in. She's already lost so much time with you. I won't let her lose you again." Dominic thought about his penthouse, empty and cold. About 15 years of power that had never filled the hole Emma left. About 3 days with a little girl who'd looked at him like he was a hero instead of a monster. I gave up my empire for her, he said. Walking away now would be easier than staying. Safer, probably. But Emma, I spent 15 years half alive, and I'm done with that. So yeah, I'm all in. For her. For you. For whatever this is. Emma's tears spilled over. It's a family, you idiot. This is a family. I've never been good at those. Well, you'd better learn fast, because Lily's already planning your birthday party, and apparently you like chocolate cake. I do. You do now. Before Dominic could respond, Lily burst back through the door, Marco trailing behind with an apologetic shrug. I got bored, Lily announced. Then she stopped, looking at them sitting together. Are you guys okay now? Emma glanced at Dominic. He looked back. And somehow, without words, they understood. Yeah, baby, Emma said. We're okay. Good. Because I have a question. Lily climbed onto the bed, settling between them with the confidence of a child who knew she was loved. Dee, are you my daddy? The room went silent. Dominic looked at Emma. She nodded, tears streaming freely now. He turned to Lily, to this impossible miracle he'd found through a phone call and desperation, and let himself say the truth he'd known from the moment he'd seen her eyes. Yeah, sweetheart. I'm your daddy. Lily's face split into a grin so bright it could have powered the entire hospital. I knew it. Mama said my daddy was lost but could be found, and I found you. She threw her arms around him, and Dominic held his daughter for the first time, feeling every broken piece inside him start to mend. Emma's hand found his shoulder. Welcome home, Dee. And for the first time in 15 years, Dominic Castellano believed in second chances. 6 months later, Lily's birthday party filled the modest house Dominic had bought in a quiet neighborhood, far from penthouses and power plays. Marco manned the grill with surprising skill, while Emma laughed at his running commentary. Dominic sat on the porch steps, watching Lily show her friends the world's coolest dad, who could juggle and do terrible magic tricks, both skills learned from YouTube at 2 a.m. Emma settled beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder. You good? She asked. He thought about everything he'd lost, everything he'd gained. Yeah, he said. I'm good. Lily ran over, face covered in frosting. Daddy, come sing. Daddy. He'd never get tired of hearing that. Coming, princess. Some empires were built on power. The best ones were built on love. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe for more beautiful stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing how far these stories travel.